Today on CityCast Boise, Republican state lawmakers seem to be targeting Boise's new tenant protections, a 26-story luxury apartment building named Arthur, and gentrification comes to West Downtown. Plus, why Hey Boise newsletter editor Blake Hunter might hop on a flight to wine country someday. It's Friday, February 23rd. I'm Nick Kwa, and this is what Boise's talking about. Okay, we got a couple stories from this relatively short week, which honestly feels like one of the longer weeks that I've had in a while.
I agree.
But maybe that's just me. Let's start out with this thing that's moving through the Capitol, this House Bill 545, which has actually some very kind of hyperlocal impact here on Boise. The larger context here is that the House Bill 545 is meant to curb a certain ordinance that came into place that was activated earlier this year, January 1st, and it has to do with renter protection. So last year, the Boise City Council unanimously voted to adopt, I believe, 4 new tenant protection ordinances. They kind of ran the gamut a little bit. They prevent landlords from retaliating against renters who make requests, I think specifically around repairs, I think. They also sort of require landlords to return security deposits when the buildings are demolished, which are happening a lot more these days because we're going through a development boom. They also, mandated landlords provide renters with city documentation, essentially like letting them know that they have rights. But the most important thing, and the thing that House Bill 545 is targeting, is the ordinance that prevents landlords from denying applicants based on their source of income, right? And that could run the gamut. I think it could be child support, but specifically the thing that the discussion in the Capitol has been revolving around is the Section 8 housing voucher, which is housing assistance from a federal level. Of course, this is just moving to the floor. There's nothing definitive about the state of how the ordinance will be affected just yet. But you can kind of see where this is coming from. Right? People screaming landlord rights. Like, what you've been hearing as well, Blake?
Yeah, and this is kind of the latest iteration of City of Boise does one thing, in the summer or the fall, and the legislature brings it up, just a couple months later and says, no, you can't do that. And so, the legislature is just kind of generally quite pro-business. I mean, the politics of landlords is very fascinating to me, of just this idea of passive income. And, as a renter, that really gets me riled up. But their language that they're saying, to kind of give them credit as far as what they're saying, is that the city of Boise, which of course they're not mentioning the city of Boise specifically, they're just saying...
They're saying local governments, right?
Municipalities, are forcing landlords to abide by optional federal housing programs like Section 8.
Right.
So saying that they're mandating that they participate in these, optional programs. And as you can imagine, for housing advocates, this is worrying. And so I actually first heard about this from the Boise-Ada County Coalition for the Homeless, and they kind of sent out a press release. They were really trying to activate around this. This was actually last week when House Bill 545 first came out. They're really concerned. They're concerned that this is going to take away from housing nonprofits' ability to respond and to help people. And also, this is just going to... The city of Boise passed this for a reason, right? This is income that people are getting, and so they should be able to use it just like any other income, which I guess that's what I think, and that's what certainly a lot of people in Boise think. One other thing that I do want to mention, though, is that actually another element that this bill would essentially nix is a rental application fee limit that the city of Boise passed several years ago. That was from City Council member Lisa Sanchez, former City Council member, who brought that forward several years ago. And then, City of Boise tried to roll out all of these other rental protections. So we'll see if maybe some more bills targeting those other ones come down the line. But so far, it's just this one.
Right. No, actually, I believe it was the Idaho Press that reported on another bill that was introduced earlier this month. I think it was 506 that's targeting local government's efforts to regulate short-term rentals. And in the bigger picture, it's like we're using a lot of tools as a city to try to alleviate the housing affordability crisis. And it seems like the sort of response from the Capitol has been piecemeal to attack any of these individual tools.
Wow, just in real time, I just realized that we're late February, and so some of these bills are really starting to slip through the cracks for me. I just completely forgot about that until you brought it up.
Listen, it's a huge abundance. It kind of feels like a wave that comes
absolutely.
through sometimes. Yeah. And just to reiterate, right, like the idea behind this bill, this House Bill 545, is based on let's call it an inaccuracy, right? It claims that the ordinance compels landlords to take Section 8 housing vouchers. That's not true. It is the sort of line between just the prevention of discrimination and like quote unquote taking away landlords' rights, right? That's not what's happening here. The whole reason that these ordinances exist is to alleviate the housing shortage, to alleviate housing affordability crisis. Just a ton of young people in Boise, yourself included, that simply find it very, very difficult to deal with the cost of living, to find places that are affordable to live. And that's to the detriment of the health of not just Boise, but the state in the long term. You want people to stay. And for people to stay, they need a place to live.
It's frustrating. I mean, I can only imagine working at City of Boise or, any county, really. Anyone in local government will tell you and has told us for so long that, like, the number one worry about constituents is housing and housing affordability. And so then you have the legislature coming in and saying, yeah, but, landlords' rights are really important. It's just like, okay, what are we doing here?
The landlords are people.
Exactly. That's what I actually have a bumper sticker on my car that says that. Yeah.
And this is, I guess, this makes for actually a decent segue to the second thing that sort of caught our attention this week. It's the Arthur being completed. First of all, the Arthur, if you don't know what it is that very large thing, a building that's currently shadowing over the Record Exchange downtown. Blake, this one caught your eye in particular. Could you walk me through what's the development here and what it's making you sort of think about?
It caught my eye because I can see it from my apartment. It's, and a lot of people can see it from their houses, I'm sure. RIP that parking lot behind the Record Exchange. I'm sure so many people listening remember that parking lot, which, during the pandemic, it really turned into the place where people had their Trump flags flying behind their trucks that they would circle around downtown.
Oh, that's where that was. Got it. Yeah. Unfortunately, it pushed into the street itself, it seems.
But even before that, I mean, that was... a weirdly like significant gathering place for a lot of people over the years. But now it has been replaced by Arthur, which it's so funny to call it just Arthur, not the Arthur, but apparently that's what it is.
Named after
Arthur Oppenheimer. Yeah, so this building is being built by the Oppenheimer Development Corps. And yeah, it's called Arthur, which I hate. But that's okay. But it's this 26-story apartment building.
I just gotta say, when someone says Oppenheimer and real estate in the same phrase, I'm thinking of Selling Sunset, but let's just move on.
Never seen it, but I get, Oh, God. And here we are. Yeah, let's have a Selling Sunset franchise in Boise. That sounds great. But yeah, so it's 26 stories. It's essentially just going to be all luxury apartments.
Gosh, that's what I was kind of afraid of.
Yeah, and they haven't released exactly what the rental prices are going to be, but, they've said... we're selling something good here, so it's going to be more than your market price, which, again, if you've talked to anyone about the housing crisis here in Boise, that's exactly what we've said that we need more of, is more luxury apartments that so few people are going to be able to afford. But they feel confident that they can fill 26 stories of it.
They feel confident. I mean, that's what they've said. They said they felt confident they can fill these high rises, which when I look at that building, it seemed like it's floor to ceiling windows. Yeah. I can't remember.
Actually, I guess I should addend. I just assume that they feel confident about it. That was just an assumption because they built it, but I haven't seen that quote necessarily. But it is part of this larger. We were talking about this a little bit. It's part of this larger kind of spread shift that downtown Boise has been making westward. And there's the Hotel Renegade. There's the Saratoga apartments that are on like Front and 13th, I believe. And so it's just one of 3 really big structures that's currently under construction in western end of downtown. And then, there's plenty of other projects that are in the works or currently being built throughout western downtown, which is just a really interesting shift for the city of Boise and for downtown especially, because downtown is kind of the center of everything. And as it shifts westward, I mean, I joked about the parking lot, but that like this is a small form of gentrification that's happening.
Oh no, it's not a small farm. It's a pretty big farm, right? Like that, especially since that those developments could have gone to different kinds of housing, for example, or and it sounds like with the anchors being luxury apartments and the sort of amenities that would emerge around that, it's hard to think that it actually would contribute very much to the alleviation of housing affordability crisis here.
I know, yeah. And it's part of this larger kind of gentrification of Boise that I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I mean, mentioning Arthur right outside of it is 11th Street. And so, there's been so much construction over the last year, and it looks great, and I'm glad that they've got the bike lanes there now, the raised bike lanes and stuff. But it's got this cookie cutter element that you look at it and it just feels like it could literally be anywhere, which is a big part of gentrification. Is this kind of ease that you're trying to distill in wealthy people that can kind of move anywhere with no restrictions. I don't know. I also want to add the caveat that I say this as a white person living in West Downtown in a building that was not here 10 years ago. So I'm implicated in this as well. But it's this larger process of I think that we think of gentrification as something that happens in other bigger cities, but it's absolutely still happening here.
Yeah, at this point, it seems to be happening on a city. Whole cities are gentrifying other cities at this point, which is, it ties into that discourse about, quote unquote, Californians moving in and things like that. But, this is obviously one of the biggest stories about Boise in a minute. Yeah. And you could argue it's the defining story of Boise growth and its discontents. And, if anybody's listening to this that has an interesting counterargument as to how exactly the standing up of Arthur will actually contribute to, lowering house prices. If there's an economic cause and effect here that we're not talking about nor seeing and that we should be discussing, please reach out. I would love to talk to somebody who's sort of learning about this. Yeah. The sort of last sort of news story that we'll tackle today is something that I'm actually not super familiar with. It's sort of execution procedure, sort of preparations for the execution of Thomas Creech, who's a serial killer that's been behind bars for quite some time here in Idaho. Blake, could you walk me through who Thomas Creech is, what the circumstances are, and just give me some context around this moment?
I've written about this, just kind of sharing what other reporters have shared about Thomas Creech's case since last October or so, maybe even a little bit before that. But essentially what happened in October, well, his original execution date was actually set for back in November, and Thomas Creech's lawyers have requested clemency a couple times. They actually did get a commutation hearing approved back in November, and that's why that was delayed. But essentially, Creech has been served multiple death warrants since back in the 70s and 80s for murders that he committed. He's been convicted of, I believe, 5 murders and suspected in multiple more in multiple different states. But he's an interesting case for the death penalty conversation more broadly, just because his actual first sentencing judge has come forward and says that he believes that he should no longer be executed. Department of Correction officials have described it as a transformative process in incarceration, and has kind of seems to have just changed who he is as a person, and is very remorseful about the various crimes that he's committed, and essentially, they've tried to request clemency, but everything has been rejected, kind of all down to the wire, it seems like. So currently, Thomas Creech's execution date is set for next Wednesday, February 28th. If it goes through, which it does look like it will, Governor Brad Little has said that he is going to go through with this, he has no plan to step in. It will be the first execution that Idaho's conducted since 2012. Again, the death penalty is a tough one. It's, kind of no matter where you fall on it. This is a tough case just because of his the ways that he's changed as a person, and also when it's been so long since Idaho's last execution, you've got to kind of pause and really just think about it.
Think about the why, right? Why are we going through this? Yeah.
He's 73 years old now. But again, it's also, this is going to be, the method will be lethal injection. And 2 important notes that I always want to bring up around that is, this is not a peaceful or, merciful death. It's extremely painful.
Right.
And relatively new research has come out about that in the last many kind of couple decades. So we have known that for a while. And then the other thing to mention about this is that states across the United States have had a really hard time obtaining lethal injection chemicals, which is actually, it's part of the reason why, let's not forget, death by firing squad is now currently legal in the state of Idaho, for other states as well. But we don't know where these lethal injection chemicals actually came from. So new legislation has made it so that states and pharmaceutical companies don't have to declare where these chemicals have come from, because it's been made such a big issue by anti-death penalty proponents, which, part of their claim is that almost 200 people who have been executed in the United States since 1973 have since been found innocent, or at least not guilty of those crimes, which is certainly one big question mark that hangs over the death penalty conversation. It's pretty grim. There's just, no matter how you slice it, even if you're very pro death penalty, I think that in the next week, it's this would be a good time to sit down and really think about what's going on here. But it is currently scheduled for Thursday. Yeah.
Right. We'll be keeping an eye on it as the week progresses next week. Alrighty, let's end this week on a sunnier note. And speaking of sunny, there is a California-related story that caught your eye, Blake. Tell me a little bit about this sort of wine country jaunt that you're planning for yourself.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm planning it for myself now. That's news. I'm excited about this now. Essentially, Avalo Airlines, which I'm actually not very familiar with Avalo Airlines. Avalo
is actually it's a low-cost carrier that's based in Houston.
Well, they are bringing a flight from Boise Airport to Sonoma County. So all of my fellow wine moms out there, let's go. But essentially, starting May 2nd, so getting ready for the summer, the Boise Airport's going to have a new flight twice a week, Thursdays and Sundays. Nonstop flight between the Boise Airport and the Charles M. Schultz Sonoma County Airport. So yeah, right in the middle of wine country. And this kind of comes at a weird time for the Boise Airport, with a few different flight cancellations and shifts over the last couple months. So maybe this is kind of this is the little cherry that's supposed to assuage us. That everything's okay because we can go get some wine.
Yeah. I mean, we had an interview with the director a couple of weeks ago. And this feels like it's part of that push, right? They're consolidating flights based on demand. And if the demand tells us anything about the makeup of Boise, the demand for a flight to Sonoma suggests that we have a lot of wine enthusiasts in August who would pay a ticket for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Are you a big wine person? I actually don't know.
No. I love to go. I have gone and visited a couple of vineyards in Canyon County that I've loved, and I want to do that more, to be honest. But it just feels like, I don't know. I've still got that farm kid in me that just kind of will never not I don't know. Doesn't feel like a day that's super well spent to me, even though I do enjoy it. Yeah. Are you a wine guy?
I'm not. I would do an afternoon in wine country if there was anything but the wine. Actually, the last time I drank wine was actually when I got the wine pairing at Kin, and that was the one time.
Yeah.
Perhaps the time that I realized that my body actually maybe is allergic and rejects wine, because I was passing out at the table and did not feel good. And it's nothing to do with Kin. It's nothing to do with anything. Turns out this is my biological constitution.
Interesting.
Okay. Give me a good non-alcoholic beer country. That's what I want.
Yeah, where can we go? Is this a European thing? It's probably just Denver or something. I don't know.
Well, so there's that. And then, one last thing that caught my eye this week. Caught my eye because I signed up for it. So Race to Roby Creek.
Yeah.
This big race that happens every year, half marathon, goes up Shawmont Road and into the wilderness, I suppose. 2,000 feet elevation gain, 13 miles or so. The thing sold out in half an hour this year. And I was told that it was popular. I did not know that Boise was filled with lunatics.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I might be wrong, but I think that 30 minutes is a little bit long.
Oh, really?
I could be completely wrong on that, but I know that, I know it has happened faster than that for sure. I know that you've been getting into running more in the last year or so. What compelled you to be one of the lunatics that signed up for this?
It's a combination of peer pressure and arrogance.
That'll do it.
I am not a trail runner. I am training to be a trail runner for this. It's gonna be a capstone. Like I'm always looking for new ways to abuse my body, and this is
this
it.
and wine. Yeah,
you're not gonna join me out there?
I've done it before. I don't need to do it again. And I will say it's not really a trail run. It's just a gravel road, but it is. Oh gosh, it's a pretty grueling one. I wish you the best of luck. It's and this is coming from someone from all the Sawtooth Relay fans of the podcast. I have ran up Galena 3 times. I've done that leg several times, and obviously it's worse than Roby Creek, I think, in my opinion, because you have to run another leg later in the day. But Roby Creek it's a lot of fun, but my gosh, you really need to do some knee stabilization and really build up that strength, because once you get up the mountain, I should say, then you start going down and your entire lower body will just become jelly. And that is honestly, to me, the worst part of the race, is that like you work yourself up so much for this huge climb, which it is really big, but then you've still got a couple more miles left to go to get to the finish line. And that is where I almost died. So
oh man, what have I done?
I guess pace yourself. Just know that you've got to take on the whole race rather than just the mountain. Because I was running at the time, I was just like really committed to being like, everybody talks about the mountain at Roby Creek, so I'm gonna kick its butt. Yeah, and then
nobody tells you about going back down it.
Which people do talk about it. It's on the map. Should have read it, but I didn't. So. Best of luck.
Well, thank you for making me feel nauseous. Well, we'll see how this goes.
My strategy is that now it's actually just going to be like underwhelming, and it'll be fine. So.
Oh, no. I am, my heart palpitations is picking back up. Before I pass out, thank you so much for joining me this week, Blake. I wish you a great weekend ahead.
Thank you. Have a good one.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. The show was produced by Evelyn Avitia, Frankie Barnhill, Grant Irving, and Dylan Broken. Blake Hunter writes our Hey Boise newsletter, and our music is by Up Is the Down Is Deaf. We'll be back Monday with more stories from around the city. See you around.